Let's start our discussion on simple and compound interest with a CAT problem. So here is this problem. It says a sum of money compounded annually becomes rupees 625 in 2 years, and it becomes 675 in 3 years. The question is, what is the rate of interest that this arrangement is earning, right? So you got these options in front of you. Now let's see. Now basically what we do not have is the original principal, right? And what we need to compute is the rate of interest per annum. So based on what is given to us, based on what is given to us, so what we are given is that the money amounts to rupees 625 in 2 years. So that means the amount at the end of 2 years is 625. Right now, if I use the compounding formula, this is the original principal, which I've assumed as P times 1 plus R by 100 squared, right, for 2 years, right? So this is where we are in terms of earning a 625 rupees as amount in 2 years compounded. Okay. Now similarly, if I have to use this 675, then amount in 3 years is 675, which is using the same formula but for 3 years, 1 plus R by 100 cube. Right now, while we have two unknowns, and we have two equations, we should be able to solve them pretty straightforward. The traditional way would be to open this square and this cube respectively and solve, but it's going to get very complicated. Why? Because you're going to have terms of r cube here in the second equation. So let's call this the first one and the second one. So the second equation is going to have r cubes, and the first equation is going to have r squares, which is going to complicate things. So a very simple way out of this is, let's divide the second equation by the first one, right? Because you see that the only thing which is getting multiplied is 1 plus r to the r upon 100, right? So that's the only factor which is multiplied with this with the right hand side of the second of the first equation. So we divide the second by the first. The left hand side is 675 divided by 625, and the right hand side is this whole thing divided by this whole thing. Now I may write the whole thing, but you notice that the p and p will cancel, and 1 plus r by 100 square and 1 plus r by 100 square would get cancelled, and all we are left with is 1 plus r by 100. That's all we are left with after dividing the right hand side of 2 with the right hand side of 1, right? So when we cancel out, we notice that 25 is common here, so 25 squared, so we get 25, and 25 times 27, right? It's 50 more than 625, right? So it's two more multiples more than 25, so we get 27 by 25, right? So what we get is r upon 100 equals 27 by 25 minus 1, which is 27 minus, if I take 25 as denominator for both, then I'm left with 2 by 25, right? So what we get is r equals 2 by 25 times 100, right? So 25 for the, and r equals 2 into 4, which is 8, right? So r percent, the rate of interest, r percent becomes 8%. Correct answer is B, right? Let's move on. All right, let's look at the second problem. The second problem says what will be the simple interest rate on rupees 700 at which is invested at 9% per annum for a period from 5th February 94 to 18th April 94, right? So what we are given is the principal, right? What we're given is the rate of interest, and we are given the starting and the ending date of our investment, right? So frankly, this problem is nothing but the most complicated or the most complex part of this problem really is computing the time period between this starting date and this ending date, right? So let's start. Now the month of first thing that we notice is that the year 1994, right, it is not a leap year, right? Because a leap year, for a year to be leap year and the February to have 29 days, the last two digits must be a multiple of 4. We notice that 94 is not a multiple of 4. So this February, the February of 1994 is going to have only 28 days. Right? So let's see how many days in this particular investment will February have. So the month of February, our money is invested for 28 minus 5 plus 1 days, right? Because the investment was made on 5th February, so we'll count from 4th February, right? So we get 28 minus 5 plus 1, we get 24 days, right? Then March is going to have the complete 31 days, and April is going to have the complete 18 days, right? So when we add all of these up, we get 73 days. Right? Now in terms of years, 73 days works out to 73 times 1 by 365 years, right? Which is 73 times 5 is 365. So we get a very clear 1/5 of the year for which this money is invested. So now computing simple interest is a straightforward exercise. The simple interest is principal into the interest rate times the time duration, which is 1 by 5. So when you simplify, you get with 63 divided by 5, we get 12.6 rupees. So the correct answer is A. Let's move on. Alright. So Ajay now borrows 1500 from two money lenders, right? He pays an interest of 12% on one part of the loan, and he pays 14% on another part of the loan, right? So if he had borrowed a total of 1500, if his original borrowing was rupees 1500, then the 1500 is actually split into two parts. The first part is borrowed at 12%, right? Let's call that part X, the principal, right? The second part is borrowed at 14%. Let's now, because this part is X, right, and both these parts must add up to 1500, the second part becomes 1500 minus X, right? So the interest, the simple interest, now the time duration really is 1 year, right? It says entire year. So the time duration is 1 year. So the interest paid on the amount X at 12% is the principal times interest times 1 year, right? And the interest earned here, or the interest paid here, is principal times interest rate times the time period, which is 1 year, right? Now both these, the interest here and the interest here, both these add up to rupees 186, right? So what we get is 0.12x here plus so when I open this, this is 0.14, right? This part is 0.14. So when I open this, I get 1500 into 0.14. I can simply write that as 15 into 14, right? This multiplied by 0.14 is equivalent to 15 into 14 minus 0.14x, right, equals 186. Now this part and this part, they add up to negative 0.02x, right? So this negative 0.02x I'm going to take here to the right hand side. It becomes positive, and 15 times 14 is how much is this? This is 21, 24, 14, 140 and 70. Yeah, so this is 210. 15 times 14 is 210, and I bring this 186 to the left hand side. This is minus 186. So this difference, what we're getting is 0.02x is equivalent to 210 minus 186, which is 24, right? So x is simply 24 divided by 0.02, which is, what we get is 2400 by 2, which is equal to 1200, right? So the amount that he had borrowed at 12% is exactly 1200 rupees. The answer is A. Let's move on. Alright, so this question says a sum of money is borrowed and paid back in 2 equal installments of rupees 882, allowing 5% compound interest. We have to find the sum of money borrowed. Okay, so let's say you want to take a minute and try this question on your own. You can pause this video and come back to the explanation. Alright, the explanation here goes. So let's say we start with the amount P. This is the money that was borrowed initially. Okay, now if the amount P was borrowed initially, then the amount due at the end of 1 year on the original principal P equals P into 1 plus R%. Right, this is the amount formula for you would remember that the amount formula in case of simple interest is amount at the end of n years equals principal times 1 plus n into R%. Right, now here n is 1 because what we are interested in is the amount at the end of 1 year. So this is 1 into 5 upon 100. So this is this is 1 upon 20, and 1 plus 1 by 20 is 21 by 20. Right, so this is the amount which is due at the end of 1 year. Okay, all right. Now if 882 gets paid at the end of 1 year, right, then the principal for second year really is or let me just write it as 1.05p. yeah, so if 882 gets paid at the end of 1 year, right, then the principal for second year really is this amount which was due at the end of 1 year, but only 882 out of it got paid, right? So this is the principal for second year. So the amount due at the end of second year is, again we'll use this formula, the principal for second year, which is 1.05p minus 882 times 1 plus n is 1, r by 100 is 5 by 100, right? And we know that this also equals 882 because that's the second installment which was paid at the end of second year and the loan was completely finished off. Yeah, so we'll simplify this. What we get is left hand side, we'll retain this bracket on the left hand side. So we have 1.05p minus 882. This is 1.05. This is equal to 882, and we take this 1.05 here. Yeah, so when we cancel these out, we notice that what we get is 840. Right, so again solving this, we get 1.05p, we retain it in the left hand side, we take this 882 to the right hand side, we get 840 plus 882, we get 1722. Okay, now when we divide 1722 by 1.05, we get the value of our P, which is equal to 1640 rupees, right? So clearly 1640 rupees was what was initially borrowed. The amount due at the end of 1 year became 1640 times 1.05, out of which 882 got paid. Now whatever the balance was, the interest on that amount, right, became, actually that amount became 840. Now when 5% was paid on 840, the amount due at the end of second year again became 882, which got paid, right? So the correct answer is 1640. You'll mark A. Let's move on. All right, let's read this question. A sum of money becomes 4 times of itself at a simple interest in 10 years. We have to find the rate of interest. Now clearly the starting principal is not given to us, and there are these 4 options out of which we have to choose. You may want to take a minute, try this question, and then come back. You can replay this and see the solution. Okay, solution here. So let's start with the original sum of money which has been borrowed as rupees 100. Right, so if we start with 100 rupees at the beginning, yeah, what we get at the end of 10 years, right? So amount at the end of 10 years that we get is 400. Why? Because clearly the amount due at the end of at the end of 10 years is 400. Yeah, why is that? Because what this question says is that the sum of money becomes 4 times of itself, right? Now we know that the amount at the end of n years in case of simple interest is the principal times 1 plus n into r percent, right? So we'll use this formula. So 400 equals the principal, which is 100, times 1 plus n is 10 years, r is what we need to find, right? So we just need to solve this simple, very simple equation. So we'll cancel out this double zero with this double zero. We get 4 equals 1 plus r by 10. Yeah, so r by 10 equals 4 minus 1, 3, or r equals 30, right? So r percent is what we are looking for. R percent is 30%. So the correct answer is C. Straightforward. All right, let's move on. All right. So this question says a sum of money becomes 7 by 4 of itself in 6 years, right? At a certain rate of simple interest. What we need to do is we need to find what that interest rate is. Yeah. All right. So let's say we start with the borrowed amount equals rupee 1. Okay. Now if the amount borrowed was 1 rupee, which is the principal anyway, the amount due, right, at the end of 6 years, or A6 really is 7 by 4 into 1, right? So rupees 7 by 4 is what is due at the end of 6 years. Now we know that in case of simple interest, the amount due at the end of n years equals the principal times 1 plus n into r percent. Yeah, so we'll use this. So A6, which is the amount due at the end of 6 years, 7 by 4, equals the principal, which is 1 rupee, times 1 plus n is 6 years, and r is what we need to find, right? Sorry, this principal should have been 1. Okay, so what we get is 7 by 4 equals 1 plus 6r by 100. Yeah, we take 1 here, so we get 7 by 4 minus 1 is 3 by 4. So we get 6r by 100 equals 3 by 4, or r equals 3 by 4 times 100 by 6. We cross multiply. We take 100 to the numerator of this side and we take 6 to the denominator of this side. So what we get is 3 times 2, 100 divided by 8 is 12.5, right? So the rate of interest is 12.5. You want to express it in percentage, we get 12.5%. So the correct answer here is B. All right, let's move on. All right, now this is a slightly more interesting question, and I would want you to pay attention. Now what you can also do is I'll read this question out and you can pause this video, take your time with it, and then come back to the explanation. Now the question, the way it goes is that the RBI lends a certain amount to another bank, SBI, on simple interest for 2 years at 20%. Now SBI, right, the bank who has borrowed from RBI, they lend it onwards to another company on compound interest for 2 years, right? So look at what SBI is doing. SBI is borrowing money at simple interest, right? And it is lending it onwards at compound interest for exactly the same time period, right? Again 2 years, and exactly the same interest rate, which is 20%. What we need to do is we need to find SBI's earnings and express them as percentage, right? So you may pause the video now, take your time with it, and come back to the explanation. All right, so here goes the explanation. Now let's say the amount of money which is not given, right, the principal be 100, right? So this 100 rupees is what SBI has borrowed from RBI, and this 100 rupees is exactly what SBI has lent onwards to this company. Okay, so if 100 rupees were borrowed for 2 years, then the interest that SBI will pay to RBI, right, is principal into interest rate, which is 20%, into time 2 years. So what we get is 100, let's cancel it out, so we get rupees 40. So this is the amount that SBI pays to the RBI at the end of 2 years, right? This is the interest amount. Of course, this is over and above the principal of 100 rupees that SBI will have to return to the RBI. All right. However, what SBI earns is interest, right? The compound interest. This was simple interest. SBI earns compound interest, which the company B pays to SBI. This is going to be the amount that that will be due at the end of 2 years minus the principal. So in case of compounding, you would know that the formula is principal. So in case of compound interest, you would know that the formula is the amount, right, minus the principal. So we'll apply this here. So the amount, so the principal of 100 rupees, 1 plus 20 by 100 squared, because it is for 2 years, and we'll subtract 100 from it, right? So we get, this is 1 by 5, 1 plus 1 by 5 is 6 by 5. So we get 100 into 6 by 5 squared minus 100, right? So if we take 100 common, we get 36 by 25. This is 6 squared divided by 5 squared minus 1, right? So we get 100 common, 36 minus 25, 11 by 25 is what is left in this bracket. So we get 25 times 4. Let's cancel this. 4 11 the 44, right? So the net profit that SBI has made is, so net profit that SBI has made is 44 minus 40, which is 4 rupees. When I find the percentage on the original principal, this 4 becomes 4%, right? So my answer is 4%. That's the earning, that's the percentage earning that SBI has at the end of 2 years. Now, while all of this computation is good, right, when we are working for CAT, you know, we need to be a little bit smarter. So what happens is that we know that the difference in the amounts to be paid in case of compounding and simple at the end of 2 years specifically, right, that difference. So I'll just write this formula. So compound interest, which is due at the end of 2 years, minus the simple interest, which is due at the end of 2 years, right? This difference, when we keep the principal, the interest rate, the time period as 2 years, when we keep all of these same, equals R% of P. Why? Because R% of P is what is the extra principal that gets added for the second year, right? And the extra interest that you earn in the second year is R% on this principal, right? So based on this, we get this difference, which is what we are calculating here anyway, equals R%, which is 20% of 20% of P. In this case, let's say 100, right? So what we get is 1 by 5 into 1 by 5 into 100. So we get 1 by 5 into 1 by 5 into 100. So this is 25 for the 100, right? So this difference on 100 rupees principal is 4 rupees. So again, we get to this computation, right? This part that we've done earlier. So earning 4 rupees on a principal of 100 rupees is 4%. Now you notice that by applying this, things are very, very quick, right? So you can remember this formula to find out the difference between compound and simple in case of 2 years. Now remember, this is true for exactly 2 years, not for 1 year, not for 3 years, exactly for 2 years, or 2 compoundings rather. All right. Right, now let's look at this question. Now this is A little bit more interesting than all the previous questions we've done so far. Yeah, so let's see what happens here. Find the compound interest at the rate of 10% for 3 years on the principal, which in 3 years yields 300 rupees when invested at 10% in simple interest, right? So you can pause this and come back to the solution, right? So let's solve this. Now we have to find the compound interest which is due on a principal, right, which must compute using this part, right? We are not given the principal directly. We need to compute the principal based on this. So what is the principal, right, which invested for 3 years at 10% gives us 300. Now what I'm doing is I'm trying to solve this part in the brackets, right? So we need to find this principal. So this principal is clearly P times 3 by 10 equals 300. So this principal is 300. We take this 10 here and 3 here, 1,000 rupees, right? So if we are looking back at this problem, what we are really saying is find the compound interest at the rate of 10% for 3 years on a principal of rupees 1,000, right? So now it becomes fairly simple. So the compound interest is equal to the amount, which is P times 1 plus R percent. Now this is 3 years, right? Minus P. So we get principal is 1,000 rupees. This is 10%, 10 by 100 cube minus P. Now we know that this bracket is 1 plus 1 by 10, right, or 11 by 10. So 1,000 into 11 by 10 cube minus P. Sorry, this P is 1,000 as well. So we take 1,000 common and we get 11 cube is 1331 by 1,000 minus 1, right? So when we take this as 1,000 by 1,000, we get the bracket simplifies to 331, right? 1331 minus 1,000 numerator. So we cancel this and the amount is rupees 331, right? So this is what we get as compound interest on a 1,000 rupee principal, right? So we mark A. All right, now let's look at this problem. This says an amount of 12,820 is due 3 years from now, right? It must be fully repaid in 3 installments starting from the first year. Now the first installment is half the second and the second is 2/3 of the third installment. The question is, if the rate of interest is 10% per annum, what is the first installment? All right, you have these options in front of you. Take some time, pause this video and see if you can solve this. All right, welcome back. Let's solve. So let's try to analyze this part first. Why we need to analyze this first is because we need to ascertain how these installments are related to each other. Okay, now if let's say the first installment was rupees X and it was half of the second installment, then the second installment has to be 2x, right? Because the first installment is half of the second. Now let's look at the relationship between the second and the third. Now second is 2/3 of the third installment, so clearly the third installment has to be 3 by 2 times of the second installment, so that makes it 2x into 3 by 2 or 3x, right? So how the installments are getting paid is whatever amount was paid at the end of 1 year, the double was paid at the end of second year and 3 times the amount was paid at the end of 3 years, right? Now with this information, let's plunge into solving this. Now let's what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a table which is going to simplify these things for you. All right, so let's start with the year, the principal, right, the amount due at the end of, let's say if we are talking first year, then we are talking the principal of first year here, and we are talking the amount due at the end of the first year here, and we are talking the installment which is being paid at the end of 1 year, right? So the amount due at the end of this year minus the installment paid here is going to become the principal of the next year. So let's start. So for first year, the principal is 12820, right? Now if this amount is invested at 10% per annum, right? So the amount due at the end of 1 year is going to be 12820 times 1 plus 10%, right, which is 11 by 10 times of 12820. So this amount, when I compute, equals 14102, right? So I'm going to write this here, 14102. Okay, now we've assumed that the first installment is rupees X, right? So if the amount paid is X, then for the second year the principal really becomes the amount due at the end of first year, 14102, minus this installment which has been paid. Okay, now if this is the principal for second year, right, then the amount which is due at the end of second year is going to be 14102 minus X into this 1 plus 10 by 100, which is 11 by 10 anyway, right? So I'm just simply going to write 14102 minus X principal times 1 plus R by 100, which is 11 by 10, right? So when I simplify this, I get 15512.2 minus 1.1x, right? So this is the amount which is due at the end of second year. So I'm going to write it here. So 15512.2 minus 1.1x, right? Now the installment which is paid at the end of second year is 2x, right? So the principal for the third year now becomes 15512.2 minus 1.1x and minus 2x, so we get 3.1x, right? Now the amount due here would clearly be this principal times 11 by 10 again, right? So let's compute it here. So 15512.2 minus 3.1x into 11 by 10. Let's simplify this. We get 17063.42 minus 3.1 times 1.1, we get 3.41x. Now you see guys, while I'm simplifying these into numbers, you can also leave them as product of, you know, whatever numbers you make all the computations at the end, provided you're comfortable with all these you know, holding on to these computations. But I thought for the purpose of this video, let me just simply, you know, compute and show it to you, right? So the amount due at the end of the third year is 17063.42 minus 3.41x, right? And this is equal to the third installment, which is 3x. Why is this equal? Because the entire amount now gets settled. The amount due at the end of year 3 gets settled by an installment of 3x, right? So now it's a simple straightforward simplification. So we get 17063.42. You take this minus 3.4x minus 3.41x here to the right hand side, you get 6.41x. So the x that you get is 17063.42 divided by 6.41. When you simplify, you get an amount, the x equals 2662 rupees. All right. So this 2662, I find that is available in none of these options. So I will mark E as the right option. Thanks for watching the video. You can give your feedback in the comments section below. Please click the like button if you thought the video was helpful. For lesson updates, you may subscribe to my YouTube channel People Plus, or you may read my blogs at peopleprep.com, or you can directly connect to us through our Facebook page @PeoplePlus, or you can email to me at gagan@peopleplus.com. Thank you.